Hi folks, just starting in a minute. Just getting myself organized. Well, my lights are not quite on. G'day everybody. How are we going out there in internet land? I'll just start my recording. Start recording. Make sure my lights are working. Why is that one not? That, but this color. Okay. Welcome to another week of Comp 1720/6720. I'm just going to make sure that everything here is going okay with my many Charleses. Sorry about the infinite Charles layout there. Just making sure that everything is going to plan. It seems to be streaming, seems to be recording. There seems to be sound coming in. So, welcome back to week 6. Thank you so much for joining me, everyone who's playing along at home live, and g'day to everybody out there who's watching this after the fact. This is an important lecture because it's a breather. We've been working really hard, we've been pushing fast to get through all of the code concepts that you need in Comp 1720. And the good news is that we've done it. We have gotten through all of the code concepts you needed for this course, and the rest of the course is really dedicated to practicing and refining skills and making sure that you are making the works of art that you want to with the code concepts which we've already introduced, refining those designs, refining those ideas, and giving you lots of chances to practice. So today, in today's lecture, we do get to have a bit of a breather, if you could call it that, a lecture, a breather, where, oh no, it doesn't seem to be working on YouTube. Just let me check that, whether I can see it on YouTube or not. Live stream offline. What? What is going on now? Odd. I mean, I just restarted on YouTube. How about that? What is going on now? Oh, it's there now. Okay. I think we have YouTube now. Odd. We started on YouTube. How about that? Now it's stopped. Then Rowan Bannister was replying to me. What's going on now? Oh, it's there now. Okay. Okay, I'm just going to stop that so that I don't get some feedback. Sorry for that. Oh, it's back. Okay. We're there on YouTube. Sorry about that. Okay, today's lecture, we are doing a week of revision. Basically just to slow things down and give you the chance to let all of the ideas in which we've already introduced so far this semester sink in, make sense, give you a great chance to ask questions. So if you've got questions about anything that has happened in the first term of this course up until the mid-semester break, today is a great day to ask it if there's something that's confusing you. I'm just going to make myself small. We've got a few, I guess, quite a little bit of admin to get through today before we get started. So first of all, I just want to say a few things about assignment 1. Basically, I want to just send a huge congratulations to everyone for completing assignment 1. You did a fantastic job. I think that we've got a little website, right, with all of the wonderful, oops, COM 1720. Oh yeah, it'll be here. And name tags. You can see everyone's name tag in the course. So many excellent ones that jump out at me. I think these are fantastic. The range of them, your creativity is just outstanding. We really enjoyed marking them and looking at them. And I hope that you did too, and that you're happy to share your work and have other people see it and talk to you about it. So the average mark, mean mark, was 6.5, 6.49 for assignment 1. That means that the average assignment was very good, right? A good assignment gets a credit. There were many assignments that were very good, surpassing that, getting 7, 8, 9, 10, which I was really, really happy to see. Just to have a look at the mark distribution. I know some people get obsessed about this. Some people don't really like seeing mark distributions. I think this will at least let you know where you sit within the class. Broadly, if you do the assignment, hand it in, you do a normal amount of work, you think you've got something pretty good, it's meeting the specs, you're going to get in the range of 6 to 7. To get 8, 9, 10, you have to push further than what we're doing in various directions. And if something is less than 5, that means that you haven't met our expectations or our specification in some way. So thankfully, for this assignment, there were very few which were less than 5, which is wonderful. And for those who did get less than 5, I think that broadly, the few who were there, it was about not quite putting in the right amount of work or the right amount of stuff within your sketch. There just wasn't quite enough there in order to say this is a passing grade. But I think that you're very close to getting there for next time. You can see in our distribution that we did have a few people who didn't get any marks. They got 0. Basically, that's people who did not submit the assignment. And I think that there were a few people in the class who were on the fence about staying with the course, and they may have actually dropped it now that census date is behind us. So broadly, most assignments are in this range of 6, 6.5, 7, 7.5. Please keep up that work. The next assignment, assignment 2, assignment 3, and the major project, the difficulty does step up, so please keep putting in the work. Make sure your work is not only meeting the specifications, but is good quality. You're considering the artistic aspects, and you will stay in that region, which will be wonderful to see. So just huge thanks and congratulations to everybody for their name tags. If there are any questions about your assignment 1 mark, please let us know. I've worked out this way of sending automatic discourse messages to everybody about their assignments, so that's quite fun. I run a script to do that. Assignment 2 has been released and it's due on Monday next week. I've put on Discourse, I put this on Monday, a list of top tips from our tutors and from me about how to make a great assignment 2 submission. The firstly and most important, make sure your assignment meets the spec. It has to be a view through a window and it has to be interactive. Make sure that your interaction is meaningful, so it contributes to the meaning and content of your window. Make sure the viewer understands your intention, so make sure your sketch, if you show it to someone else, make sure they understand what they're supposed to do to interact, whether it's typing keys on the keyboard, moving their mouse, or something else that you figured out in P5JS. If your friends can't work it out, then we marking it can't always work it out. So I don't want to miss anything. And if you have to explain it to them, maybe you want to try to show them somehow within the sketch, but hopefully not just with a screen of instructions in text. Show them somehow how to interact. Like if you're supposed to click on something, maybe that little thing will wiggle or move a little bit so that it indicates that it's supposed to be clicked. Make sure you've got something in your statement of originality. I don't like seeing any empty statement of originalities, really, because I think that everyone in the class is taking inspiration from places on the web, from artworks, from their friends, from the world around them. You can have something in your statement of originality. I want you to think of the statement of originality as a reference list for an essay. If you were taking a course in where you write essays as the assessments, you would always have a reference list. And if it was empty, the lecturer might be like, well, this person is not engaging with the literature. They're not engaging with the greater academic world or scholarly world, and that's part of this course. So part of your job in this course is to engage with other artists. You do that with your visual diary, with your colleagues, with the world, with code online. Then you need to put it in your reference list, and in our world, that's the statement of originality. So please put something in there and take pride in it. And don't forget about it, otherwise we'll have to have a little chat after the assignment. If you've included something in your sketch which is not listed in your statement of originality. Finally, make sure your artist statement is explaining what your artwork is about, explaining how you're communicating it and what you want to be communicated. If you do something clever in your work, please tell us about it in your statement of originality, in your artist statement, because otherwise we might miss it. So it's very, very important to tell us about everything you're thinking. I'm going to keep moving on, but if you've got any questions about assignment 2, feel free to put them as a reply to this thread. A few people have already asked a question, which is great. But broadly, I would like to see more questions on the discourse forum. As a lecturer, I don't think I'm seeing enough. And I think that partly that could be because, I would like to think that that's because we're teaching you everything you want to know, and you're all perfectly 100% confident with everything you're doing in your assignments. But I suspect that that's not quite the case in all cases. And what I want to say is that you will not ever be punished for asking a question on the forum. Never, ever. Asking a question on the forum is one of the best things you can do for yourself and for your colleagues. Because if you ask a question, I guarantee you there's someone else who has the same question who hasn't asked it yet. So, or there's someone else with the answer who can tell you and enhance their learning by doing that, by helping you out. So do ask questions. Now, a little report on something wonderful which you folks did last week with the course reps, which was to do a course survey. And it's given us a really interesting insight into how students are finding the course so far. So thanks to Benedict and Jarvis for organizing that, your course reps. We had 61 responses from this course survey, which was excellent, given that we have about 150 students in the course. That was a really good number. 41 responses from 1720 and 20 from 6720 students. I would like to hear more from you folks doing Master of Computing and the other Master's courses. So do send us your feedback and do ask a lot more questions. We probably will do another course survey soon, so this is a useful stat. Average time to complete the course survey was 1 minute, so it's not going to take you a long time to do these surveys. Just for your knowledge, this course survey is organized by the course reps, and they send me a summary of what happens. Your lecturers and your tutors will never know your identity if you say something to the course reps or if you fill in a survey. I'm not sure if the course reps even know your identity in that survey. They may have made it anonymous. I wouldn't know. It's completely anonymous to me. So, a few of these kind of questions. How were the lectures? What was the quality of the lectures? In general, people think the lectures are good quality, which is excellent. Thank you so much. Great there are people tuning in and watching live or tuning in later. Thankfully, no one has said that the quality of the lectures was very poor. That would be upsetting. There's a few people who think the quality is poor. You know, if you've got a reason that you don't like the lectures, please tell me. I take a lot of pride in how I present my lectures, and I do want them to satisfy everybody as much as possible. So if you've got any suggestions, let us know, or let us know through the course reps. Quality of the labs. The labs are not quite as many excellents and goods. So excellent was 23 for lectures and only 11 for labs. The labs, compared to lectures, labs are much harder to get right in an online learning environment. The lectures really, for many students, most students don't go to lectures and they watch them on Echo 360 later. That's not a bad thing, that's just how people are. So when we're doing lectures online, they're not really any different when they're online than when they're in person, because most people are catching up with them anyway. Um, the labs are really different, because labs we're used to doing in a classroom. We're used to having instant interactions between students and tutors. I think you folks, the students, are used to this idea that there's a tutor around all the time, kind of in your peripheral vision, and you can kind of see what they're doing with other people. So you get information from the tutor, even if they're not talking to you. And when we're online, on Teams, you tend to only feel that you're being looked after by the tutor when they're talking to you, which is much more intensive from the tutor's perspective, right? They have to talk to everyone, and it's hard to talk to people for an even amount of time, so it's much harder to get right. We're working on this every week. I know that it's hard to get right, and I know that it's not satisfying everyone right now. So hopefully in the next time we have a survey, we won't have anybody thinking that they're very poor. We won't have anybody thinking that they're poor, but we will keep trying. So it's a tough thing to get working. Benedict just asked a question in the chat. I'll get to that in a minute. The quality of assessments, there's not as many people thinking they're excellent so far, although we've only had the 2 assessments. A lot of people think that they're good. So broadly, people are happy with the assessments and average, and no one thinks they're very poor. So that's a relief. Perhaps more interestingly, we have some feedback over the whole course. This is what people thought were good. People like pair programming. I like pair programming as well. I think it's a great way to get you in contact with your colleagues in the course during the labs, so that you feel you're not alone, so that you feel like you have an idea of how everyone else is going if you're seeing someone else coding as well. People like the lectures and think they're comprehensive and enjoyable. I'm happy that people think my pronunciation is clear. I worry about that, because I know that I tend to, if I speak in my normal Australian accent that I grew up with, I would blend too many of my vowels together. And when I lived overseas, I learned to speak a little bit differently so that people could understand me. Otherwise, it was too hard for them to hear me. So thanks for that feedback. People say Tony is a wonderful lecturer. I totally agree with that. I enjoy listening to Tony's lectures as well. People think the tutors are very responsive, which is great. They'll appreciate that. Someone says they like the YouTube channel. Me too. I love being able to keep my lectures on YouTube outside of Echo 360 and just sort of in a place where we can all access it more easily. Someone likes the visual diary, which is great. I like it too. I like that you get a chance to do a little bit of work outside of class each week, which really is just about understanding and appreciating art. It's a very simple exercise, and it's a very important one though. So I think it is good. People like the labs are interactive. Me too. And someone said they just think we have a great atmosphere in lectures and other places. So I'm really happy to hear that. This is all good feedback, and I'm really pleased to get it. It's very affirming and wonderful. But I'm also really interested in the not so good feedback. So let's have a look at not so good. Wednesday overtime, I do tend to speak to 90 minutes, not 60 minutes on Wednesdays. Someone says they can't stay due to classes. That's a hard one, isn't it? Because there are other people who want more details in the lectures. And I think as I'm learning to teach this course, this is the first time I'm teaching it, I'm finding out what I want to do in each week, how much I want to do, and really that involves an hour of explaining things and then half an hour of doing a demonstration when I talk to you and we get to make some code together. So I don't want to skip that extra 30 minutes, but what I try to do is put the really important stuff in the first 60 minutes. So if you can only make that 60 minutes, that's fine. The last 30 minutes, if you do want to join me for it, you can also catch up on YouTube later if you can't make it. Thanks, Neem has just said that there's an excellent vibe here in Comp 1720. That's wonderful. Sometimes there are details in the lectures that are brushed over. Yeah, and particularly to do with the math stuff. One of the ways that this course is structured at the moment is to go really quickly through the coding techniques in the first 5 weeks, so that then we can spend the next 7 weeks revising, packing in more information and practicing, so that you can do a major project that you want. Because the major project is quite a big project, it's due in week 12, at the end of the semester, end of week 12, then there's no point if I introduce you to a code technique in week 10 because you won't be able to use it. So what we do is we put all the code in the first 5 weeks and then we try to unpack it and revise and get better. But I understand that, I hear that feedback, and that's partly why we've got a revision lecture today and working on these details all the time. There's some difficulty with the labs because there's a lot of tasks and they're a bit complicated. People are confused about what they're supposed to hand in, if anything, from the labs. You don't have to hand in things from the labs, so maybe that's a bit confusing. Maybe it's a previous version of the lab, or it hasn't been correctly updated or proofread, which is an issue. As we go, we are updating every lab to make sense in an online context, and they're not always all working as well as each other. I think we're getting better with them. We've discovered some ways, well, particularly I want to shout out to Harrison, who's doing a lot of work here, inserting some little exercises for you to get something done in the browser quickly in the first part of the lab to try to speed you up through the first exercises, get your brain warmed up so that you're ready for the paired off group work, which I think is what I think is most valuable in the labs. Someone says they would prefer the whole lab to be live. I can understand that. I would prefer to be in person, or I would prefer to have some way of matching the in-person experience with a live environment. I would like to try to experiment with that. We haven't quite worked out the best way to do it. And at the moment, the individual calls is the best way we have for dealing with the lab. The lab is really for you to be doing work, not for our tutors to be presenting to you. They're not lecturers. Your tutors are there to help you with work that you're doing. So even though I know people want the tutors to be presenting stuff, they want to hear more from the tutors about how to do the exercises, that's not exactly their role. Their role is as helpers and to answer questions that you come up with. So I know there's a temptation to want that, but it's perhaps not something which is always practical and can ask more from the tutors than is really available. Someone has said that there's less sharing of what we've made in this course, and that's something I think we could try to work on going forward. Share more of your own work. So we'll talk about that in a second. Some people say the visual diary takes a long time and it's hard to translate things they find in art into P5.js. I hear that as well. I think that my feeling about a good number of time to spend on your visual diary is 1 hour. If you're spending more than 1 hour on your VD, then think about how to streamline that process for yourself. Of course, if you want to spend more time, that's fine, but it shouldn't take more than an hour for the core tasks. There's also questions about how the lab marks and VD marks are connected. That's also something we're working on over the course and improving. I think that we're tuning that as we go. Again, it's an issue with going online that changes this relationship between labs and visual diaries. It changes how much time things take. So marking visual diaries could happen in 10 seconds per person in a live lab, just having a look, asking 2 questions and moving on. And when we have to make calls and organize it, it seems to take longer in online labs. So we have to change something to make sure you got contact with your tutors about the lab content as well as your visual diary. So here's where things are a bit more hairy, the OMG feedback. This is feedback I don't like to see, but it's feedback which is most important for me to see and for your tutors to see, and also for you to see if you have some feedback like this that you didn't feel comfortable saying. So people leave labs, can't find anyone to live code with me. This one's really hard for me to hear because you get most out of labs when you're working with other people, when you're hearing what other people are doing, when you're contributing ideas with other people, when you're teaching someone else how to do something that they don't know how to do. And the fact that someone can't find anyone to work together with in a meaningful way is a big problem. So that's partly why I'm pushing so hard for people to stay in your labs. You need to be here. The carrot is that you get to learn and have fun, and the stick is that you lose some marks if you don't participate properly in your labs. So please don't leave your labs. Please take them seriously. Please go. Even if you think you know the work, you can make a big impact on someone else by helping them, and that actually helps your learning as well. Someone says they're struggling with assignments and they're not sure where to get help. So I guess that's a hard thing for me to hear, because I think that there are ways to get help which are not used enough in this course. I don't see the posts on the discourse about questions, about the assignments. I'm not receiving that many emails or private messages on discourse about assignments either. And our tutors haven't really had so many people wanting to share their assignment work with them in their labs, which is something they would often see in live labs. So that's a hard one. I've highlighted here where to get help. We actually have a whole forum we've set up for you to get help. So that would be the primary place. If you've got something you don't want to reveal your identity, you can post anonymously. If you want it to be private, you can PM the Comp 1720 admins group. I've set up some links on the help page and all over our website now to build a message for you. So if you have any issues, send a message on Discourse. And this final one, which is really hard to look at, can't keep up. And that's a symptom of trying to get through a lot of code stuff in the first 5 weeks. So, you know, there's at least one person who feels that, and I know there are more people out there who feel like they can't keep up with this course. And that's upsetting, because I feel that it's our fault. I want this course to be something where everyone can participate, everyone can create art with code. It's not a course with other prerequisites, so if you can't keep up, get in touch, take control of your learning, ask questions. We've got lots of strategies to help you, but I can't help you if I don't know. So that's why I'm getting people to post as much as possible. If you just feel like you can't do anything, send me an email and I can send you a list of strategies to start working on your code. Find ways for you to practice and find ways for you to keep up and catch up. And I think everyone can do it. So what's our response? What will we do? Well, every week we're updating the labs. We're offering more scaffolding for everyone. I think that should help some people who feel they can't keep up as well. We're going to continue tuning our visual diary procedures, and I'll let you know about it every week. I meet with the tutors every Friday. We go over what we've done in that week, and we make a strategy for next week. So we will keep doing that. I will keep you accountable for regular engagement. What does that mean? I will make sure that you feel it if you skip labs. You won't get the marks, and you won't get the kind of positive reinforcement. If you're not engaging with this course, it's no good for you and it's no good for your fellow students. So it's something that I need to keep you accountable for. What you can do, you can ask questions in the forums. Now, Benedict said, well, what if it involves an idea for an assignment that you're not ready to share? Well, if you're not ready to share it, then I guess I can't help you. But if you are worried that I think it's not ready to share, don't worry about it. I would much prefer that everyone shares their full assignments all the time and we lived in an open society with complete freedom of ideas in this course, right? I know that sometimes you want to keep things under wraps, but if you have an issue with an assignment that's to do with code, maybe try to reformulate it into something that can be a question, or reformulate it into something which can be an explanation of how you solved your problem that doesn't exactly relate to your assignment. But no one's going to have any penalty for sharing assignment code on the forum, because there's no secrets here. There are other courses where if you share your assignment, that sort of spoils it for everyone else. But in this course, everyone is doing a different thing, so there's no spoiling. All you're doing is helping yourself by getting it out in the open, and helping others by giving them inspirations and maybe helping them with problems that they don't know they have. You can also include things you've made in your visual diaries. And particularly, I would like to see people including things they make in P5. So if you do something in a lab that you think is cool, talk about it in your visual diary. If you see an image on the internet or something which is striking, make a version of it in P5 or as best you can, and include that in your visual diary. So share your work, get it out there. We encourage it. I want you to do that. Make sure you're participating in labs as much as possible. And I want everyone to focus on pairs and peer learning. That's the most important part of the labs because that's where you get the opportunity to see what other people are doing, teach someone else if they don't know, and be taught by your friends. Of course, there's some lab exercises to do individually, but they make more sense when we're all working them in a group and solving our problems together. And we know that people learn better that way. So our experience from last semester was that the social aspects of labs were really missing. And that's what I'm really pushing for you folks to recover this semester. Yeah, share your work in labs, share it on the forum, make posts on the forum about anything. If you see something cool in P5, share it on the forum. If you discover something cool in P5, share it on the forum. If you're stuck with something in P5, share it on the forum. At the moment, the forum is like 99% visual diaries, which is great. Everyone's doing their visual diary work, but I'm not seeing the kind of difficult questions, exciting ideas that I would hope to see so far. So use the forum. Take ownership over your learning. If you feel that you're behind, I hear someone just says, well, it's harder to catch up when you're online, when you're remote. Now is a good time to catch up, actually, because you've seen all of the overview of everything. You've seen all of these code ideas, and you've seen a great many things that you can do with P5. And you can open up a book on P5 and kind of work out what most of the words mean and start to fill in your knowledge. So fill gaps, with videos. Look at Dan Schiffman's videos on YouTube. I am a follower of Dan Schiffman in every sense of the word. I watch his videos. I'm inspired by his videos for the way he teaches. Someday I hope to be doing something which is cool as what he does, but I work on it every day. So you can follow Dan Schiffman too, and many other coders as well on YouTube. We've got this thing called a library, and they have books to help you learn things. And if you go to the library, you don't even have to go anywhere. You can just go to a website, library.anu.edu.au. And you can find this search function. If you type in P5JS, you can find that there are 2 books, Getting Started with P5 and Learn JavaScript with P5. And this Getting Started with P5 one, actually, you can go and read it for free. It's on published by O'Reilly, and they've got a whole website, not that one. You have to make a little account. I'm already a user. Come on, website. Anyway, there's a whole book that you can look at. This is a great thing to do starting right now to help you with assignment 2, and then over the mid-semester break to make sure you pack in all of the concepts from this course. Check out this book. It's got a lot of the stuff that we do in class, and then details because it goes in some slightly different directions. Custom shapes, little creatures, robots, reusing values, variables, repetitions, a little bit of maths. So if there's something you feel you don't know, looking in this book will help you with the answers. And I want to say that I've been there in a course, got to the mid-semester break and thought, far out, I have no idea what's going on. And the mid-semester break is the time when you can recover from that because you've got a breather. They don't have classes every day, you don't have tutorials every day. You can go back to basics and go through things linearly, and you can catch up. So it can happen now, not too late for anybody. Okay, that's what you can do. You can also ask for help. We're all here to help you. We have a page called Help. Read the website. If you want to send us a private message, I've got a link which opens up a pre-filled private message to Comp 1720 admins. That will send it to me and all of your tutors. So if you have anything that you need to ask us in that format, we're very happy to help you. I would ask that you don't message tutors on Teams outside of labs. The tutors can feel a bit like surrounded by students all the time, and they're also students, they're also doing labs on Teams, and if they're trying to focus on their assignments, it's a bit much to have Teams pinging at them saying, oh, your student wants this help with this thing, why didn't I get my marks for this? You know, I don't like seeing that. So please just try not to message them on Teams outside of labs. Ask them on Discourse, because Discourse is kind of dedicated to our course. So, one last thing in the admin section. It was a long admin today. I am actually taking a little bit of leave sometime soon. It's related to a new baby arriving in my family, so I'll be taking a few weeks leave when that happens. Babies don't work on a schedule, so it could be any time starting now, really. And that means I'll be away for a few weeks. What I have got organized is all of the rest of the course. Everything is perfectly ready for you to do. I have Tony is going to be lecturing for you on Fridays as normal, and I've organized for another lecturer, Kieran Brown, one of our PhD students who has taught this topic many times before and is actually much more well-versed in P5JS than I am. He's a fantastic person to hear from. He will be able to give you some lectures while I'm away. Yeah, thanks, folks. Anyway, I don't say too much stuff about my home life in lectures, but I think it's important to make sure that you know what happens when I disappear. Nothing bad will have happened. It will only be something good happening. So, yeah, you know, that's life stuff. I think you'll survive without me, and if there are any really big problems, I probably won't be completely switched off from email. But the way it works is that I will take 3 weeks off at the start of the new baby. So if it happens tomorrow, then you maybe won't even notice, because it'll be mostly during the mid-semester break, but we will see how it goes. Okay, for the rest of the lecture, the rest of today's lecture, we're just going to do this recap thing. Code theory recap. Just going to have a think of, look at the questions we've had so far. Benedict had this idea of the liking the name tag wall. I really like that too. You can thank Ben Swift for that. I borrowed his idea from the major project gallery and made that for all the name tags. It would be really cool to get each lab pushed back, and we can organize that for you. It will just be something we arrange in our latter labs. So for now, I think the easiest way to share your work is to take a screen cap and just post it in your lab's chat. That would be really positive and help a lot, I think. Yeah, so I won't be gone forever, just for 3 weeks, and then I'll be back to hopefully take you through to the end of the course, unless it's a very late baby. Code theory recap. Here's where we started. Penning like a 5-year-old. Simple idea, right? Why did we talk about this idea? Because I wanted to communicate to you that computers only do what you tell them, and they're very specific and needy about your instructions. So if you tell a computer to draw a line that's 5 pixels long, it will draw a line that's 5 pixels long. In the very first lecture, we went through these, you could say, our first words. And I called them on that day commands, but now we know that they're functions, don't we? And they're commands because you're telling P5 to draw something on a canvas. And P5 is accomplishing that and then coming back to you. And you know that if something is wrong in the canvas, if there's a picture which is incorrect, then unfortunately, although it's tempting to blame P5 for that, unfortunately it's your fault because you're the programmer. You're completely in charge of what the computer is doing. So if you put these special commands, these functions in an order which accomplishes a different picture, you'll get that different picture. It doesn't matter that you've got a comment which says, please draw an ant, and you've got the commands in there to draw an elephant. it will still be an elephant, even though you really want it to be an ant. So make sure that you are, continuing to experiment with the ordering of your lines of code and these basic first words: background, rect, ellipse, fill, stroke, random. That was a funny joke, Benedict. I should post some of those new canvas images in P5. Maybe I'll be inspired for a new kind of artwork. More in the reference. And this is, I think in the very first lecture, I really hit this point that your place to learn about P5 is the reference. I tell you a lot of stuff about how to go about learning P5, and there's sections here that can help you to do all kinds of stuff with it. You can look at examples, which a lot of people do for their work, explore examples, and just explore the reference. So don't be afraid to go to this website. It should always be open in a tab, or whenever you're doing this course, always have the reference open in a tab. So you have to be specific. You can't be vague with your commands. You have to give specific instructions. So if you want to give it a color, you use fill, you get multiple values. You can use different kind of color modes if you want to explore those as well. You can talk about position, X, Y, width, height, this kind of common quartet of values to specify where your shape should be in space. And you know about the grid now. I think it won't be surprising to anybody at this point of the course that never works. The Y numbers are high at the bottom and low at the top. Y goes down that way. X goes across this way. So if you're drawing a rectangle that starts at 1, 1 and is 3 wide and 2 down, you'll get a rectangle covering those blocks. Another thing we learned, which maybe seems obvious now, is how computers read your code. And we went through this idea that computers go through line by line, and then when they see a link like this, a command, they do that command for you. And because now you know that this is a function, we can just dig in a bit deeper. This function call, that is the name of a function with the brackets open and close out in front of it, it means that we actually start reading the function first. Ben, the previous lecturer of this course, used to say that this is reading like Wikipedia, because whenever you're reading Wikipedia and you get to a link, you click the link and then you end up reading that link forward. And when you've finished that page, you close that page and you go back to where you were reading. And of course, if anyone's read Wikipedia for a while, you end up going down like a link hole where you've just got link after link after link. So that can happen too if you had more functions that called functions that call functions. You go on this journey through lots of bits of functions, and then at the end, each one finishes, and you would end up closing off each of those functions and eventually returning to the code in your draw loop here. So this is kind of opening up the idea of the flow of code in your programs. How does your computer track through these lines of code? And we talked about how the setup code runs once, and then your draw function that you specify in P5.js, that code runs over and over and over again. It goes down to the bottom, then starts again at the top, down, 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 down. So setup, draw, 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 draw. That's the flow. Setup only runs once. And this is something you will have discovered with your assignment 1, that the order matters in P5. You have to make sure that if you want a circle on top of a rectangle, you have to draw the rectangle first and then draw the circle. I know that seems obvious now, but if you've just got a bunch of code, maybe you'd see the rectangle would be below the circle, but if it's below it in the code, it would be running second, and the circle would be running first. So there's ways of thinking about this that mean that it can be difficult to make sense of it sometimes. So make sure you get that order right. Now, where were we when we got to this point? At this point, you had all the tools you need after lecture 2 to draw anything in P5. Think about it. You could draw any picture with rectangles, colors, and circles. You could use point and just draw it pixel by pixel. You could do everything in week 2. So what do we have the rest of this course for? Well, everything else in this course is for making structured programs. Structured programs. Not just a list of pixels, setting them one by one, and not just a list of shapes that's really long. Structured programs that will save you time, save you typing, and ones that will be interactive and dynamic, moving. So don't forget this point. You knew everything to draw any artwork in week 2. Maybe not an interactive one, but any artwork at all. So if you feel like you don't have the hang of loops, then maybe don't feel so bad, because you can still do a lot of great stuff without loops. I'm just speaking about assignment 1, it was a very simple assignment, or it was simple in that it was just one static image. But there were a range of approaches to doing that, and some of the really fantastic ones did not use loops or functions or conditionals or objects. They just used the code, and they had good aesthetic sense, and they had good justifications for their artistic decisions. So think about that if you're feeling behind with the code. Maybe you don't need everything that you feel you need to be a good P5JS artist. What next? Started to do variables. This was a name for anything that has a value, and the value might change later. And remembering, sorry, this came off the slide a little bit, remembering that to use variables you have to do 3 things. Declare it with var, or maybe let, sorry, I sometimes do let, even though it's the same as var, you only need 1. Initialize it, just like here, half range equals width divided by 2, dog count 15, and then you can use it in your code. So you can later refer to a variable like width and use it to set another variable, or use it in a mathematical operation, like dividing it by 2. So declare, initialize, and use, those 3 important things. And we learned that there were special variables, ones that P5 has already declared and initialized for you, but they're just like other variables. They're here for you to use. Some of those are mouse X, mouse Y, so that you can be interactive with your mouse. Mouse is pressed, so we know when you're clicking down on the mouse button. That's just a Boolean variable. And then width and height, 2 important ones that are the size of your frame that you're working with. What can we do now? We can start to use simple maths to set out our sketches better, right? You can work out the width of your sketch and say, okay, I want it to be set into 4 quarters or something, and use maths to accomplish that without having to put in the hard-coded values for everything. That makes it easier to actually do good sketches. And you can start to be interactive because you've got mouse X, mouse Y, and mouse pressed. You can know where the user is pointing with their mouse, you know whether they're clicking, you can do a lot. And actually, this is starting to be enough to do assignment 2, right? You just need to have some of these interactions. It could be the mouse or keyboard. There's obviously other ways to be interactive, but mouse X, mouse Y, and mouse pressed are almost enough to do something really great. So you can do a lot with a little. This is where things got to be a little bit more hairy. We had this idea of variables with a truth value. And remember, truth values, we have a special name for them, Boolean values. And that means that they can either be true or false, only 2 possible values. And we also know, we went into this in very brief detail, so it's tough to organize this, but we went into some detail about how to combine different truth values. You can say one thing and another thing. The sky is blue and the sea is green. My name's Charles and you're my class. 2 truth values can, with the and operator, combines them into 1 truth value. So if both of those values is true, the outcome is true. The cake is a lie. If you want to be my lover, you got to get with my friends. Two things that are true. Less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, with the double equal signs. These were all operators that work with numbers, but they produce a Boolean type. So that was the one, these are ones you use all the time. For instance, if you have a shape which goes off the edge of the screen, you might want to say if shape.x greater than width, you know it's off the width of the screen and you can do something with it. The reason we needed those Boolean values was for this, conditionals and loops. This is where you could change the flow of your programs. You can choose which part of your program to run at certain times under certain conditions. And you need truth values to do that. It doesn't work without truth values. Shall I turn left or right? Here's some examples. Var the sky is blue equals false. So if the sky is blue, we draw an ellipse. And if the sky is not blue, we draw a rectangle. Should we just have a go of this in maybe in the P5.js editor? Let's make sure I'm logged in. I don't think I didn't even open my VS Codium today. Can I get a folder in here? Oh boy, where am I? What is even on my computer? Comp 1720. I haven't even gotten past lab 1, folks. That's where I'm up to. Sketch. And where's my, oh, it's VS Codium. I need to be in VS Code. Whoops, VS Codium and VS Code are a little bit different. It's the same program, but one's like published by Microsoft, and the other one is the kind of freeware version of it. Okay, here we are in VS Code. This is my blob arrays. I was going to make another sketch.js. I'll rename that to sketch2 and make a new one. Oops. Sketch.js. Oops. Setup. Uh-oh. Okay, we got my code from class. Get my other function, draw. Go live. I need to make my canvas, right? How do I do that? Create canvas. Okay, here we got my canvas. So if the sky is blue, we draw, if the sky is not blue, we've drawn a rect. And if it is blue, let's change that, we've drawn a circle. Now what I think I might do is move this, oops, move that into my draw loop. Okay, we get the same thing so far. And instead of the sky is blue, I'm going to put in mouse pressed. Mouse is pressed. So if mouse is pressed down, I end up with an ellipse, and if it's not, I end up with a square. I should probably draw some background so that I get that on top, get something on. Okay. Now I've got some interactivity, and I've got a var that I'm using, mouse is pressed, a built-in variable, and I've got a conditional arrangement with if and else. If mouse is pressed, draw an ellipse. Whoop. If it is not pressed, else, draw a rect. So this seems very simple when you look at it like that, and I know that things get more complicated, particularly if you're wanting to track like whether the mouse is inside a square, or there was an exercise a couple of weeks ago about trying to find a mouse inside a circle. Well, that's a bit of messing with your head kind of thing. If you've got objects that go off the screen, you have to take care of a few things together. You might need to do something like combining variables. So we could have if, what was it? Sky is blue equal false. You could have mouse is pressed and sky is blue. So combining multiple conditions together. So now even if I click my mouse, it's never going to work. If I change that to true, now when I click my mouse, it will turn into a circle. What about this one? Mouse is pressed and mouse X less than 200. So if my mouse is pressed, click down the button, and my position on the x-axis is less than 200, which I suppose will be about there, 200 pixels. So I'm holding down my pressure on my button. As I move across the 200 pixel boundary, it turns off or on. Rect, that means I'm out of 200 pixels. Ellipse, that means I'm within 200 pixels of the left edge. So those if and else are really useful and really important when you're doing interactivity. Where's my lecture notes? Sorry to whoever has to go to their lecture, it's now 3 o'clock. So I do have more slides to go through. I'm going to keep going through this big revision. I know that there are people who want to look at it online, so you feel free to leave now and catch up later if you need to. Otherwise, I will catch you next semester, after the mid-semester break. That's too far. Another important one, this frame count idea. This is a funny little example. Actually, I haven't run this yet, so I hope it works. But just getting rid of that. Whoop, where's my... So what's this one going to do? If frame count greater than 60, text you lose. Else text, wow, you're so good at this. I don't know if text is going to work if I haven't loaded a font or anything. How's text work? P5, js.org. Someone's going to tell me in a minute. Shows how much I know. I can't remember how to use text. I don't have locations. Text, 100, 100. So this frame count, that's another variable that's already set up for us. That one is going to change, count up every time we run the draw loop. So every time I run draw, frame count goes to +1. Eventually it's run 60 frames after about 2 seconds, and it will then change to you lose. So this is not a very fun game. I'm not sure if this would even be interactive, but what this is dynamic. This sketch is the easiest sketch you can write, which changes with respect to time. Another easy dynamic sketch we did was this one. Ellipse, 50, frame count, 50, 100, 100. Okay, a very easy dynamic sketch that would move a circle across the screen. How are we doing that? We're using frame count as one of its values. So there are ways to make things move in time by doing a little bit of maths with frame count, which can be really fun and could be really useful for an interactive picture window, because generally when you look out a window, I guess something is happening in the world, as well as you being able to interact with it on the computer. Okay, that was my conditionals. Loops, another important bit of syntax for changing these things. I think the while loop and the for loop, they're the only two loops we go through. I'm a for loop person. I do like to use for loops, but I think that they can look a bit intimidating. So I'm just going to focus on while loops today. So while I equals 0, That's my startup. Var I equals 0. I've set up a variable I. Why do I need it? Just because I want it. While I is less than 10, we do something. And then at the end of the loop, I change I. Yep, probably. Harsh has just asked me a question. Probably. Can anybody else think of how to do that? Whatever you put where this comment is going to get looped. So I'm going to just make a little, add this to my sketch. This is your loop kind of template. If you need to get a loop, grab this template out of the slides and copy it into your code. So this one could make a bunch of ellipses. And what I'm going to do is put them at 50 times I as their x value. So what I'm imagining now is I want to make a sequence of dots across the screen. And rather than doing just maybe 10 different ellipses, I'm going to use a loop to do it. Why should I do that? Well, it saves me some typing. It means I can do 1,000 if I want to, not just 10. And it's just kind of cool to use computers like this. So this is the power of computers. They do stuff for you. You can program them to do it for you. You don't have to give every single specific instruction. So let's do this sketch. I've got my 10 circles. If I want 25 circles, that's easy. I can make 25 circles. Importantly, I have to put this I equals I plus 1. What happens if I miss that? If I forget about I equals I plus 1? What will happen? Let's find out. This happens. Blank screen. Where's my code? Does this happen to you? I think it happens to, and now I'm getting these angry yellow messages. That's frustrating. The answer here is that we needed that I equals I plus 1. And what's happening is that our ellipse code is looping until I is equal to 10 or greater. But I, in this case, is never changing. I is always 0, so it will never change to be more than 10. So our code never exits this loop. And now my fan is spinning on my computer. It's getting really angry. I might have a look in the web developer and see if there's anything happening in the console. And we're in the little browser window. Is there a... Yeah, here we go. Control-Shift-K, I should have remembered. Can't even open it. Stop it. There's my console. We're not really getting anything, are we? It's one of these situations where it's actually a bit hard to debug this because our code hasn't finished. If I start to put in some prints, this is where we can start to get some interesting stuff happening. Starting loop. Oops. And another print. Stopping loop. Stop that. So I got the starting loop, but now I can see that my code has never finished the loop. I never get to stopping loop. So I might eventually remember, oh, actually I'm never exiting this while loop. If you get this stuff, web pages slowing down your browser, you're probably stuck in a while loop that's never exited. So I need to do I equals I plus 1 so that my I goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then the loop stops because this condition is no longer true. Stop it. Now my code works. I've got my starting loop, stopping loop every time. Yeah, the blank screen of doom. The blank screen of doom is really tough because sometimes it's hard to work out what's broken in your code. So I would suggest that if something's broken in your code, start putting in little print statements like this. This is a command that only puts this text in the console on your browser, not on in your canvas. So you can use it even in your sketch that you send to us, and we won't see it. It's just something for you as the developer to make sure you know what's going on. It's probably not good practice to do this in production, but for learning, it's okay to put a bunch of print statements in to do your debugging. Now, where was I in my overly long lecture? I'm not going to talk about the for loop. There's a lot of details about that online. The while loop is enough of a loop for anyone. They both do the same thing. They loop some code. The for loop is just one I happen to like more. Yeah, print statement's very, very useful. So what can we do now? Now we've got dynamic sketches. We can make decisions in our code, and we can repeat our code to save typing. Repeat sections of code over and over again, changing the values each time to make multiple things in our sketch. And that's really exciting. Now, functions. We're getting close to now, aren't we, with the now course? Functions. No social distancing occurring here, no. Syntax recap of how functions work. You know this, but each of our functions or our commands in P5 has a name, and then after the name, some curved brackets, parentheses, then a list of parameters. So in this case, it's 100, 100, 100, 100. And those parameters are, well, the name is telling our code what to do. In this case, make a rectangle. And the parameters are telling us how to do it. So make a rectangle that starts at the point on the grid, 100, 100, 100 in the x dimension, 100 down in the y dimension. Make it 100 wide and 100 high. So that's our parameter structure. How do we make our own functions? You've also started to try this out, right? You just type the word function, then you type the name of your new function, then you have to type in the parameters with a little variable name there to kind of be a placeholder for your variable. I guess we didn't go through this in great detail, but these are variables too, and you've declared them only by using them in the function's name or function declaration here. So you're declaring some variables here to be, within my function, I will be using x to represent the first parameter of my function. I'll be using y to represent the second parameter of my function. So you have to give the number of variables here that you expect, otherwise you won't be able to use them. And then within the curly braces, you will get your function code that you expect to be run. So now every time someone runs the function polka dot with x, y, this code will run. Fill 25500, ellipse x, y, 2020. Let's put this into my little, oops, that's not right. My little bad sketch. I'm going to delete what I've got so far. And I'm going to make a polka dot. 125, 376. So I've got my function, polka dot, and this line is going to call that function. You know it's a call because it's got the, whoops, it's got the, whoa, the parentheses around the parameters. And it's going to use these two parameters, which are then going to get plugged in. 125 is going to be plugged into x, and 376 is going to get plugged into y. So when my function runs, as soon as I do this call, the function runs, it runs this fill line, then it runs this line, and instead of X, it uses 125, and instead of Y, it uses 376. So let's see if that prediction works. Yeah, I've got my polka dot there. Make it a bit bigger. There we go. And if I want to move it around, I can just change the code where I call it. So now when it runs X here, it plugs 360 into that. And when it runs Y here, it plugs 246 into that. So there you go, that's our function. Now so far this is not very useful because I've just used this code once. But if I want to make a lot of polka dots, I could give them all different numbers. And you get a bunch of polka dots all over the screen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there's one lost somewhere, I suppose. So this is great. This is saving me a lot of time because for each of these 2 lines of code, I only have to replace it with 1 line of code. And it's particularly useful if you wanted to use polka dots in lots of different parts of your program. Then you can have this function just declared by itself, doing one thing. And then all throughout your code, the rest of your code, you could have polka dot. And this is a particularly good function because its name is indicative of what it does. If you just call something my function or function A, who would know what it does? Give your functions names that represent what they do. It's only got 2 parameters, but the parameter names also kind of give you an indication about what it's supposed to be doing with them, X and Y. I don't have to choose X and Y, I can choose anything I want. Polka X and polka Y. It won't care. It's just a made-up variable name. Oh, maybe it doesn't like that. Whoops. There we go, I spelled it wrong. Or Jennifer and Stephen. Jennifer and Stephen are probably not the best names because it feels like there should be a person going in there, not just a number, and certainly not a number that represents the X location of a dot. But you can use whatever names you want. It's your program. Of course, combining functions with loops is really fun. Var I equals 0. We can start to, while I less than 20, I can do a polka dot, and I can use the random function as well. I haven't used random at all this lecture yet. I'm finally going to crack and use it. Some people don't like that I do so much random because it's hard to keep track of what it's doing. So I hear you, but it's still pretty fun to use random. Don't forget I equals I plus 1 right at the end of your while loop. Whoa, and they're different ones each time. I probably should have put this into, I can do no loop. Yeah, just get one. If you press no loop, then the draw loop stops. You shouldn't use that all the time because once you do that, it will never start again. So there's my polka dots. That's a bit crazy. Is that thing random seed 37? This means it's the same random numbers each time. Okay, that's getting a bit abstract. Back to this talk. Arrays. Now we haven't really stored any data in this lecture so far, but as you know, when you want to store a lot of data, it's usually good to put them in some kind of structure, and an array is a great choice. An array lets you get a bunch of data together. Usually they're things which are the same, like an array of numbers or an array of strings or an array of bools or an empty array. And you can keep track of them and then refer to them by kind of address or number. So I think of an array as kind of a long list of mailboxes, right? And you're just putting a little thing to remember in each of those mailboxes, and they've each got a number starting from 0. And then if you want to get through to mailbox 3, 0, 1, 2, 3, you get whatever value is in there, use it for something, maybe put it back. Maybe you want to add an extra number to your array, you put it in mailbox 4. You want to drop one off the ends, just take whatever's in mailbox 4 and throw it away. And so that's arrays. They're really useful, and we did use them in class. If I just show you within my little collection, we had the, where's my, that's randoms, no. What was my one with lots of bugs? Bug colony with arrays. Yeah, this was it. So I had a whole lot of arrays for the X location, the Y location, and the brightness of all these different bugs on the screen. That was really cool. We had a lot of fun with that, didn't we? And I used a for loop to load up all those arrays with values and get them working. Yeah, so an array, I think, it's something that which you might want to think about using in your assignment, because when you look out a window, sometimes you see a number of things of the same kind of thing, like a lot of trees, a lot of cars, a lot of people, and all of those people could be kind of stored in an array. It might be quite a useful way of abstracting your way of drawing your scene to make it more interactive or more dynamic, to put everything into an array. And it also does help you to kind of make your code easy to extend. The cool thing with my bugs was that I could change the number very simply. Whoops. Bar numbugs, bar humbug equals 100, and have fewer bugs. I could just have 10 bugs. I could have a lot of bugs, 10,000 bugs. Whoa, now it's really slowing down. So, using arrays is very useful. I think that the arrays were not so hard for people. I haven't heard complaints about arrays. I think that the loops and stuff is a bit more difficult to contextualize or understand how it works. We had these interesting numbers, array, push, pop, shift, unshift, adding things to the end and start, and removing them from the end and start. That was a bit more odd. An important one is array.length, because if you want to use a loop with an array, as I did in this example, then you could use store how many things are in the array, but you can also just put the length of one of them. So I could go bug x's dot length, and now I can, we call it in computing, iterate over. I can iterate over that array. That means loop across every element in the array. And I don't have to remember that numbugs variable anymore. So, can we put arrays within arrays? Of course we can. One good reason to do that. What's a good reason to put an array inside an array? If you want to store an array of multiple things that each have an array, for instance, an array of points, each point in P5 is going to have an X and a Y, we could use an array of an array to do that. So in this case, we're doing it. We're storing an array of points. We're iterating over points.length. That's great, just what I did before. And then we're getting these two variables, points I 0, that's going to be the X value, and points I 1, that will be the Y value, and then do some stuff with that. So we can iterate over an array fairly easily. And last topic, most recent week, objects. This was where you've now been practicing this in the lab. I don't expect this to be completely sunk in yet, but like with arrays, it was storing a whole lot of things together that were the same so that you didn't need to call them by name. You could just call them by number and expect to get the same kind of thing. A whole bunch of points, a whole bunch of strings, a whole bunch of numbers. With objects, you're going to have some bits of data together, just like an array, but instead of calling them by number, we want to call them by name. So I want to get my left shoe, right shoe, watch, belt, sunglasses, shirt, and pants. That would be an array of an object of clothes. If I had them as an array, I would have to always remember that left shoe was 0, right shoe was 1, watch was 2, belt was 3. And if I ever accidentally got those mixed up, I would be trying to put a shirt on my legs and then hold my pants up with a shoe and put a watch around my right foot, which would not be very useful. So that's why with objects we give them names and not numbers to refer to each of the things within our collection. With arrays we're using numbers because it doesn't matter, right? If I've got an array of points, it's not so important that point 0 is what it is and point 1 is what it is. I can switch them around. Maybe they do have an important ordering, but they're not different in any other respect. So with objects, a bunch of properties or variables, each of which has a name and a value. This is really useful. You could see it start to get useful with our long Pokemon examples. We've gone through a lot of Pokemon stuff now in the last week. I won't do any more Pokemon today, but this was our syntax for creating an object. Sally, the Pikachu, with level 1, HP 100, with Ash as the owner, and that's captured. So, can you use objects in your assignment? I would say that if you look out a window and you see a thing, that thing might have an X location, a Y location, some other properties, its color, size, what kind of a thing it is. You might want to use objects to help you draw your interactive picture window. So give it a go. You've had a lot of object preparation now in this week's lab, so I really encourage you to make use of that information. We did a lot of getting and setting. We generally use this kind of notation, sally.species, with objects, but you can also use bracket notation. And this kind of starts to lead us to the belief that arrays and objects are kind of more similar than we would hope. But they actually are the same thing. They're just different views of the same concept within JavaScript. They're officially different, but they are represented by objects. Arrays are actually special objects that just have representations. Every key, every name of a thing is a number instead of a name. So should we use arrays or objects? If you've got a bunch of values with different types or specific names, use an object. If you've got a bunch of values which are the same type of thing, maybe you've got 16 Pokemon, you could have an array of Pokemon, but each Pokemon has different properties. So it makes more sense for it to be an object, not an array. But you can also use both. Don't be afraid to have an array of objects, an object full of arrays, or vice versa. And if you get halfway through, just change it. We did do this bug stuff is fine with arrays, but we also did it with objects the next week. Bug colony with objects, object bug. Was this it? Maybe. That's one bug. Maybe that was my demo that I was doing for myself. Blobulation sensation, I think that was it. We had an array to contain a bunch of bugs. This one got a little bit complicated, but it's still pretty cool. This code's online. Feel free to check it out if you're interested in how it works. Yeah. Whoop. Now the last thing I want to say, last important thing, is that I guess I hope that everyone has tried out using the JavaScript console in their web browser, because this is how to solve your own problems. If you find that you've got the white screen of doom, or that your code is not working, or is not doing what you expect, then check the console so you can put out that fire. How we check the console on every web browser has a different way of doing it, but in Firefox, you're going to press Control-Shift-K, Control-Shift-K, and now I get my console. And when you do start running code and run into trouble, or it doesn't do what you want, start printing stuff out. RAN setup. So if this code runs, if it prints out RAN setup, I know that all the code above that ran, at least. It didn't stop anywhere there. RAN setup. I used to do this a lot, bad debugging, particularly when I was for a while being a musician and creating work with computers in theaters, and there were like audiences ready to come in, and it was very stressful to write code under those conditions. In a rehearsal, fixing something during the day, people are coming in at night, and my code will be full of these bad print statements to say, did this, did that, just so I could be sure that it's working. Draw. So now I'm doing a lot of draws, but usually the JavaScript console is smart enough not to just print them all out. It just counts them up. I could print out a value of I, for instance, print I. So it prints I, gets up to 20, and then does a draw. Yeah, and you can do them. They tend to get annoying if you've got too many, so sometimes I just comment them out instead of deleting them to come back to them later. But this is how you're going to actually, get your code working the way you want it. Don't accept it if it's not doing what you want. You can fix it. A few recommendations just to recap what we were doing today. Check out the sketches we've done together in lectures. If you're confused about how something works, and extend them, try them out, mess around with them. Talk about them in your visual diary if you want to. It doesn't matter to me. They're free for you guys to play with. You could play reference golf, open a random page on the reference and try to put it together to make something cool. If you feel you need more support in your own time, read this book, Make Getting Started with P5.js. This is particularly useful to you folks out there who are not quite on top of the code part here. It would also be useful to people who think that they are on top of the code part. I think you will learn something from that book as well. And then there's the JavaScript documentations. I think that this is probably a little bit advanced for people who are not on top of the code part. So that's for folks who are now feeling that they've got the hang with P5.js and they want to know more about JavaScript. Then you can start to do the JavaScript tutorials, look at the JavaScript reference, and start to do some more advanced stuff. But if you're not on top of the code, then this Make book is really going to help. That would be my advice. Yeah. So I'm just going to stay online for a bit. We're way out of time. 3:32. My normal 90 minutes. Lab 7 task, use P5.js to paint the words check the console. That could be a good task. What do you do in Lab 7? That's all things after the break I haven't quite got my head around yet. Now's time for questions. If there's something you're unsure about or you need help with it, I'm here to answer it right now. So jump in and ask something. Otherwise, I'll probably stop in a minute. I might do a bit of a bouncing blob or something before I go. Yeah, Lab 7 is playing some sound. That's where we're at now. Ooh, Jarvis has accidentally skipped ahead and played some sound. Why don't we make a moving polka dot? So we'll just get our existing polka dot. So frame count. Here's our first moving polka dot. This is a pretty easy moving polka dot. Had some encoder error. Well, assignment 2 with sound. Harsh, that's a great question, and it's a good one to put on the forum, because what I think it would be is that you would want to try to change the file to a different format. I'm not completely, I can't quite completely remember how to do this sound stuff in P5, but the folks on the forum will be able to help you with it. So even if you send a private message to us if you want, if you send a private message to the admins and just say your university ID, we can find your assignment on GitLab and help you with it. Or making a public message is fine too, with whatever code you want to include, and we can certainly help you to get that working. My thing runs out of batteries after 90 minutes at this point. I've used that battery too much. Yeah, that's great. Do ask on the forum. It will really be the best way to do it. Sound is a little bit like week 7. It's a week 7 problem. So far my polka dot goes forwards. I can also make it go backwards maybe. What if I do width minus frame count? But what if I want to send it in any direction? I might actually start using a object for this. So instead of draw polka dot, I'm going to have it called an object. It's going to have an X, 100. Oh no, access denied? Oh, that's no good. Sorry, Benedict. That's hard for me to figure out how to make it work, so I'll test with you folks later about getting that to work. It ought to work. There's my polka dot, polka. And I'm now going to make this, I'll call it draw polka dot instead, draw polka dot. I'll then do it in JavaScript style. And it's going to take P for a polka dot, P dot X and P dot Y. Oh. So now I can call this function on my polka.p. Oh, something went wrong here. Polka. Whoops. There's my polka dot. And I'm going to make another function called move polka dot. So this is going to change the x values of my polka dot so that it moves in a certain direction. And I could do it like this: x equals x plus 1, y equals y plus 1. So far so good. What have we got? We're going to, I don't need the random seed. We've got a background. We draw our circle, our polka dot, and then we move it. And I don't need to now store separate coordinates for any of my polka dots. I can just have them built into the object. So this is where objects get to be really useful. And it's because I'm adding one each time, it's going to go diagonally down. I could just do it with the X, it'll go horizontal. But what if I want to send it in any direction? I might add a few extra properties. I will say X mov is 1, Y mov is -1. So I can store the direction. Instead of storing the direction of movement within the move polka dot function, I'm storing it within the object itself. That's a bit more useful. P.x equals P.x plus P.xMove. P.y equals P.y plus P.yMove. Now what do I get? It's going up in the y direction and then across in the x direction. That's pretty good. But my problem now is that my polka dot has disappeared. So I need to do something so that it never disappears off the screen. And what I'm going to do, I'm kind of making this up as I go along. I haven't really practiced this. I want it to kind of bounce off the edges of the screen. So maybe what I'm going to do is change it so that if p.y, after that change, if, I'm just making it up, y is less than 0, that is it's off the top of the screen, or y is greater than height, and I should use p.y here. If p.y is less than 0, it means the center of the polka dot has gone away in this direction. If it's more than height, it's gone off the screen in this direction. If that happens, I'm going to, oh no, off the screen. I'm going to change the amount of movement for the y direction. P.ymov equals P.ymov times -1. So I'm going to change it to go the other direction, the other way. And similarly for x. Oh no. Similarly for x. That's got to be width. Okay, let's see how this works. Uh-oh. Oh, x.y, that's not right, p.x. I knew it's useful to have the console out. Oh, it bounces. So now I've got a dynamic sketch with some physics now, some bouncing physics. And it bounces off a wall when it gets to the edge. Yeah, thanks, Ron. Well, that's cool. Can I change my speed? I want it faster. I've got to make it go faster. Boom. Neem's just asked, I'm trying to work on my assessment code, but for some reason when I run the code in the live server, it runs the code from the lab instead. The live server is, when it starts, it runs the code that you have open at that time. So what I would do is open your assignment in VS Code. If you've got the live server open, click this just to close it, close the browser windows, and then start it again. And it should open a live server for the code that you're currently running in your window. It's probably set the live server up to serve code from your lab directory, not from your assignment directory, and that's the only issue that you've got. Shouldn't be too hard to fix that. So now I've got to move. I guess polka dots don't really move, do they? Well, this might be enough for today. We've got an object and a moving polka dot. I guess sometime we could loop over multiple objects in an array and do lots of moving polka dots. But that might be a bit too much for today. Thank you folks for joining me. Thank you for a great 6 weeks of lectures right up until the mid-semester break. Now's the time, as I said, to refresh yourself about what you're doing in this course. Make sure that you understand what we've gone through in today's lecture and that you're up to date with it. And if you're not, there's lots of resources and time for you to get help. Make sure you start your second assignment and make a commit, push it up to our server early. I'll be sending out discourse messages soon to remind everybody to get started. We do have an assignment help session on Monday at 3 p.m. So that's even the mid-semester break, but if you need some help, last minute help with your assignment, 2 tutors will be there to help you in the drop-in lab on Monday afternoon. So I hope you guys have a great time with assignment 2. Enjoy your mid-semester break. Hopefully you folks get a little bit of relaxation time as well as some times to upgrade your knowledge in courses and make sure you're really on top of all your work. I know you folks will have some mid-semester assessments for other courses as well. So good luck with all that. I'll sign out for now and catch you folks after the break. Or if not, you'll find Kieran here instead. See you later.